When Martin Scorsese praises a movie, you know it matters. The 1990s gave us some of the boldest, most emotional dramas in film history, and Scorsese either made them himself or couldn't stop talking about them. From mob epics to sweeping war stories, these are the films he called unforgettable. Goodfellas, 1990. The 90s kicked off with a bang thanks to Goodfellas. For many people, this isn't just a Martin Scorsese movie, it's the Martin Scorsese movie. Released in 1990, it didn't just land with a splash. It completely redefined what a gangster film could be. Up until that point, audiences thought they knew what mob movies were. Heavy, serious, almost Shakespearean tales of crime and power. Then along came Goodfellas, and suddenly the whole genre felt like it had been plugged into a live wire. Scorsese had already proven his brilliance with Mean Streets in the 70s and Raging Bull in the 80s, but Goodfellas had an energy that felt brand new. It was faster, sharper, and more alive than anything he had done before. The movie didn't just tell a story. It moved like a story on steroids. The camera glided and darted. The editing by Thelma Schoonmaker cut like a razor blade, and the soundtrack blasted rock and roll hits that perfectly matched every mood swing of the characters. The songs weren't just background noise. They were characters in the film themselves. And then there's that famous Copacabana shot, an unbroken tracking shot, where Ray Liotta and Lorraine Bracco walk through the back entrances of the club until they're seated right in front of the stage. That one scene became legendary, showing not just the power of Henry Hill in that world, but also Scorsese's mastery of cinema language. But here's the thing. Scorsese never wanted the film to glorify mob life. He said in interviews that the movie was about showing the allure, the seduction of that world, and then brutally ripping away the curtain to expose the emptiness underneath. At first, the cars, the cash, and the camaraderie look intoxicating. By the end, though, it all collapses into paranoia, betrayal, and loneliness. What looks like a dream eventually becomes a nightmare. That honesty is what makes Goodfellas not just iconic, but essential. Roger Ebert went so far as to call it the best film of the entire decade, and many still agree. For Scorsese, it wasn't just another gangster tale. It was his chance to push the genre into new territory, proving he could balance style and substance better than anyone else in the game. Casino, 1995. 5 years later, Scorsese went back to the crime world with Casino. But while Goodfellas was about the rise and fall of street-level mobsters, Casino was bigger, glitzier, and more operatic. This was Las Vegas at its peak. The neon lights, the money, the power. And Scorsese wanted to show the dark machinery running underneath all that glamour. Working again with Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci, Scorsese built a story about greed and control. And then he added Sharon Stone, who gave a powerhouse performance that earned her an Oscar nomination. Her role as Ginger brought raw emotion and tragedy into the film, balancing the cold calculation of De Niro's Sam Ace Rothstein. Scorsese described Casino as a story about the American dream gone wrong. Everyone's chasing money, status, or power, and in the end, it all collapses. What makes it so fascinating is the precision. Every frame feels meticulously crafted, every choice deliberate. Critics often compare Casino to Goodfellas, but Scorsese always saw them as different animals. Where one was frantic and chaotic, the other was methodical and grand. Together, they showed just how versatile he could be in the 90s, and why his own work belongs on this list. The Age of Innocence, 1993. Here's one you might not expect on a list full of crime epics and war dramas. The Age of Innocence. Directed by Scorsese himself, this film proved that he wasn't just the gangster movie guy. Instead of mobsters, we got New York high society in the 1870s. Daniel Day-Lewis, Michelle Pfeiffer, and Winona Ryder starred in this lush, heartbreaking story about love, repression, and social rules. Scorsese has said he was drawn to Edith Wharton's novel because it reminded him of the Italian immigrant world he grew up in. The rituals, the unspoken codes, the way everyone pretended to be proper while passions burned underneath. It wasn't that different from the mob. Only here, instead of guns, people used manners and reputation as weapons. Critics praised the film's elegance, its painterly visuals, and its emotional depth. Roger Ebert even called it the most faithful and passionate film ever made about the 19th century. For Scorsese, it was proof that drama could be just as gripping without violence. Sometimes the quietest heartbreaks hit the hardest. Heat, 1995. Now, let's move outside of Scorsese's own filmography and talk about Michael Mann's Heat. If you ask fans of 90s cinema, this is always near the top, and Scorsese himself has praised Mann's craftsmanship and precision as a director. Heat was groundbreaking, especially because it finally brought Al Pacino and Robert De Niro face-to-face on screen. That famous diner scene? It's become legendary. Two titans of acting sitting across from each other, their characters, cop and criminal, more alike than either wants to admit. What Scorsese admired about Heat was Mann's obsessive attention to detail. Mann researched real-life heists, police procedures, and even had his actors spend time with professionals to get it right. The result was a film that felt authentic, not just flashy. And that authenticity is exactly what Scorsese values in filmmaking. Beyond the realism, Heat captured the mood of Los Angeles in the 90s. Lonely, sprawling, and dangerous. It's a movie about men chasing something they'll never fully hold, whether it's money, justice, or freedom. That kind of moral grayness is right up Scorsese's alley, which is why Heat gets his stamp of approval. Schindler's List, 1993. Switching gears, we arrive at Steven Spielberg's Schindler's List. Now, this one holds a special connection to Scorsese. Before Spielberg directed it, Scorsese had been developing the script. He even hired screenwriter Steve Zaillian to adapt Thomas Keneally's book. Eventually, Spielberg took the reins, but Scorsese stayed close to the project and later said, "I admired the film greatly, and how could he not?" Schindler's List is one of the most powerful dramas ever made. Shot in stark black and white, it told the harrowing story of Oskar Schindler, a businessman who saved over 1,000 Jews during the Holocaust. For Spielberg, it was the most personal film he ever made, and for Scorsese, it was proof of cinema's power to bear witness to history. Scorsese has always respected filmmakers who take risks and tell the hardest stories. Schindler's List was devastating, raw, and unflinching. It didn't just win 7 Oscars, it changed how people thought about Holocaust films. For Scorsese, who has spoken about his own Catholic upbringing and fascination with morality, the film's moral urgency hit especially hard. It's a film that reminds us why drama matters, not just to entertain, but to make us remember, reflect, and feel. The Piano, 1993. Next up is Jane Campion's The Piano, another film that Scorsese openly praised. He called Campion's voice powerful, and even said he wished she made more films. That's high praise from someone who's never shy about giving his honest opinion. The Piano is a haunting, poetic drama about a mute pianist, played by Holly Hunter, who is sent to New Zealand for an arranged marriage. Her piano becomes her voice, her means of expression, and her lifeline in a world that doesn't fully understand her. What makes this film special, and why Scorsese admired it, is the boldness of Campion's direction. It's not a conventional drama. It's lyrical, atmospheric, and deeply personal. The way she used landscapes, silence, and music to tell the story felt revolutionary at the time. Holly Hunter won an Oscar for her role. Anna Paquin became one of the youngest Oscar winners ever, and Campion cemented herself as one of the most important directors of the 90s. For Scorsese, who champions unique voices in film, The Piano was proof that cinema wasn't just about big budgets or Hollywood formulas. It was about vision. The Thin Red Line, 1998. Terrence Malick's The Thin Red Line was one of the most talked-about war films of the 90s, released the same year as Spielberg's Saving Private Ryan. But while Spielberg's film was visceral and intense, Malick's was philosophical and poetic. Scorsese has repeatedly praised Malick, calling him one of cinema's great poets. And The Thin Red Line was Malick's grand return after a 20-year absence from filmmaking. The movie took the brutality of war and filtered it through Malick's meditative lens. Lush nature imagery, whispered voiceovers, and questions about life, death, and existence. For Scorsese, this was the kind of filmmaking that reminded him why he fell in love with cinema in the first place. It wasn't about box office numbers or explosive set pieces. It was about asking the biggest questions through the beauty of images and sound. The film had a massive ensemble cast, from Sean Penn to Jim Caviezel, but what really stood out was Malick's willingness to break rules. Characters drift in and out, narration changes unexpectedly, and scenes unfold more like memories than straightforward storytelling. That's the kind of daring artistry Scorsese has always admired. Magnolia, 1999. Closing out the decade, we have Paul Thomas Anderson's Magnolia. By the late 90s, Scorsese had taken notice of Anderson, calling him one of the most important new voices in cinema. And when you watch Magnolia, it's easy to see why. The film is a sprawling, 3-hour drama that weaves together multiple storylines about love, regret, and human connection in Los Angeles. Tom Cruise, Julianne Moore, Philip Seymour Hoffman. The cast is stacked with powerhouse performances. Scorsese admired Anderson's ambition. At just 29 years old, Anderson took big swings with this movie. Overlapping dialogue, long takes, sudden bursts of music, and even a scene where the entire cast breaks into song. For some it was chaotic. For Scorsese it was fearless. What he respected most was Anderson's heart. Magnolia isn't cynical. It's about people searching for forgiveness and meaning. It proved that a new generation of filmmakers was ready to take risks, just like Scorsese and his peers did in the 70s. So there you have it. From mobsters and gamblers to pianists, war poets, and sprawling LA dreamers, these are the 90s dramas that Martin Scorsese either made himself or couldn't stop praising. Together they define what made the decade so rich for storytelling. Bold visions, unforgettable characters, and directors who weren't afraid to take risks. Scorsese's admiration shows us something important. Great dramas don't just entertain. They challenge, they move us, and they stand the test of time. But now I want to hear from you. Which 90s drama do you think deserves the crown as the most iconic? Was it Goodfellas, Schindler's List, or maybe a hidden gem Scorsese didn't mention? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you love deep dives into cinema, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Because like Scorsese himself, we're just getting started.